Karie, thank you so much for joining me today on Collegehood Advice.
Thank you, Katie. I'm so excited to be here today. You have no idea.
Well, we are talking about a really interesting topic I wish I had learned about before I went and embarked on the freelancing and solopreneurship road. What no one is telling you about freelancing and solopreneurship. So I thought we could start by defining those terms, because I think sometimes there's some misunderstanding around them, or maybe some misnomers or mislabeling, just so that we have shared vocabulary that we're starting from. Let's start with what is freelancing, and then we can jump to what is solopreneurship.
Perfect. And before I dive in, like, these definitions are, you can define your business however you want to. I just want to say that up front, especially like when we talk about solopreneurship, that term is so new. Some people are like, what is that even? But freelancing, which has been around for a long time, it's where you are not hired by a specific company. You work for several different companies. So it's kind of like contract work. And there's just a simple exchange. You do the work and they give you money. And then you can go to another company and do the work and they give you money. And it's just an exchange like that. Very simple freelancing. And that's how I started in my business. I was a freelancer, which was awesome. And it was great. Solopreneurship is a little bit different. And the most basic meaning of that term is you're starting a business by yourself, which might sound like a freelancer, right? Like freelancing is the same thing as contract work, but where freelancing is contract work, solopreneurship is not contract work. It is, you're starting a business. You're starting your own business. And when we use that term business, it's usually used towards commerce, where someone is entering into commerce. But I say one of the biggest differences is there's a financial risk. And the risk of a solopreneur is greater than the risk of a freelancer. And there's another term, entrepreneur, that we all use, and that's the highest risk possible, and I'm just going to throw that in there as like a little tidbit, because a lot of people call themselves entrepreneurs, and it's great. And, we have programs now, we're calling, third graders entrepreneurs, but that is the greatest financial risk of them all. Of, a lot of entrepreneurs, the biggest definition with that is you're building something greater than yourself that eventually can sell. So,
right. So solopreneurship is different than freelancing, just to make sure I understand and help clarify. It's different than freelancing in that you are working for yourself. And entrepreneurship is different in that you are building something bigger than yourself.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well, the title of this episode is What No One Is Telling You About Freelancing and Solopreneurship. So what is no one telling us about freelancing and solopreneurship?
Do we have 3 hours? I'm kidding. So I can tell you what I've learned over the past 15 years through tears and sweat and joy too. But man, I wish somebody was telling me some of this stuff of one of the biggest overall thing is that you are a business owner. The very first episode of my podcast talks about that, of how I didn't realize I'm the boss. And I know it sounds silly, of course you're the boss, you have the business. Now, I knew I owned a business. I went downtown and did the taxes and all that kind of thing. But being the boss, all the business things of what's my salary going to be? When do I go on vacation? How do I get clients? How do I maintain clients? What is the tax structure am I even under? What is the paperwork that I need to maintain for my taxes? Marketing, invoicing, advertising, all the things that go into running a business. And that is the biggest, I would say, mistake or thing that people just miss, because we focus on our skill set. We focus on being the best speaker, the best graphic designer, the best web designer, the best fill in the blank. But there's the whole other business side that goes into it. I mean, so much so that's literally an entire degree on college campuses. It's just business. And when I went to college, the business college was completely on the opposite side of the campus than my communications, where I was studying advertising and marketing. So it is another skill set that you have to learn of being a business owner. And that to me is the biggest myth or misjudgment that people have going into it.
Yeah, that's been my experience, or in some ways challenged, because for me, my expertise is working and supporting students and higher ed. But when I left working at a university and doing that within a department at a university to start my own business, suddenly all of my attention was not on my zone of genius, which is helping students. It became focused on marketing and running a business and setting up a business. And everything I was doing was all about educating myself about business, which when I was in college, if you would have told me I was going to own a business, I would have laughed in your face, because I have no interest in that piece. I like helping students, but that is so important, because so much effort and energy has to go into the business pieces, not just the pieces that you love, the creativity or whatever your service or product is.
Yes.
Sometimes,
that's so important, because, and I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you for sharing it, because it is the part that starts to drain most people. And you start to drown in it, and most people quit because they can't succeed in that one area. And that's why I love talking about this, is not to scare people away from being freelancers, solopreneurs, is to help them along the way and say, one, you're totally normal, however you're feeling, the joy, the sadness, the good, the bad, everything that you're feeling is totally normal, but giving you tips of how to overcome that. Because the business part was the part that really started to just drag on, because it was constant. And my mom's a business owner. So I had experience of seeing that and growing up underneath that, but doing it yourself is something completely different. And so, yes, I just love talking about this stuff to help people.
What else, besides the fact that you have to have that kind of realization that you are going into business and what that means and entails, what are some other things that people aren't telling you about freelancing and solopreneurship?
Woo! Know your money. Know your money. And it's all the way around. It's understanding how your business makes money. Like, how do people really make money in your industry? And what kind of money do you want to make? Like I said, like being a boss, when you go to a job interview to work for a company, they kind of tell you your salary range. You may be able to negotiate a little bit higher, but there is a range there that they have established, that they've worked with their CFOs and the team, and they said, we can afford to pay this much. But when you're working for yourself, you have to decide that. But most times we don't even know the money we need to make to survive, like the baseline of the business, one side, and then our personal side. So one of the things that I've seen, like in talking to students, and this question actually just came up last week. So I do this thing in class, in my digital publication 1 class, where every Wednesday I answer questions. So on the second day of class, they gave a list of questions. Everybody was able to write 2 questions, and I've been answering their questions all throughout the semester. Well, as you can imagine, it's all around freelancing. How do I freelance? And so one of the questions that came up was like, how can I make X amount of money? And I was like, well, how much money do you want to make? And someone said $100,000. Someone said 50,000. Someone said 75. There's no wrong answer. Whatever you want to make is what you want to make. But I said, is that what you want to make, or is that what the business will make? And they were like, wait, what? And I was like, well, if you want to make $100,000, how much money will the business need to make so that you can get paid $100,000? And they were like, wait, what? And I was like, if you bring in $100,000, you don't make $100,000, because you got the business taxes, your business bills, you got to pay yourself. And that's the whole money thing is a
Mhm.
completely different area on its own. And that's like when I'm coaching clients, I have a money exercise. This literally is an exercise called Know Your Money. And it's so eye-opening of what comes out of that with the money. So I would say, you know, understanding that you're the boss, knowing your money, and just understand the business of your industry. Right? Not just how to be a boss, but what makes your business run. For instance, being a graphic designer, what's happening in my industry, the business side? How do I get a client, maintain the client? When do you offboard a client? How many clients do I need to have in rotation at one time? One of the things that I learned later was about retainers. So I was just doing literally one-off jobs with clients of like, here's your logo, here's your business card, then website design. But then that doesn't sustain itself. You need to have clients on retainer that are paying you every single month. Then you have to ask a question, well, what are they willing to pay me for every single month, and build the business that way.
So kind of familiarizing yourself with what other people in the industry are doing, where you can differentiate what are the standards and best practices so that you don't seem like you're out of left field.
Yes. So talk to people. And when you are in college, this is what I tell all my college students, people love you in college. They love students. They will talk to you more likely than when you get out. Because the moment you graduate, you're kind of competition, right? And it's like, you know, but when you're in college, it's like, I can give back. You know, I can go to this school and talk to you. You know what I'm talking about, Katie.
Oh yeah, I'll share with you. I tell students for years, I got this from a career counselor years ago at my university. It's being a puppy versus a stray dog. Everybody loves a puppy.
Yes. Yes.
But nobody wants to take in a stray dog. And that's the way it is. College students are a puppy that everyone wants to help. And unemployed 25 or 30-year-old is like, well, you're going to have to pick yourself up by your bootstraps to figure it out. And so you've got to take advantage of that time.
Absolutely. And it changes real quick and real soon. Yes. So interviewing people. And that's what I did when back in college, I started out in pre-law. And I did a bunch of interviews with people early on and realized, oh, this is not the career for me. Like, I thought I would be doing just a lot of debating and arguing and wearing Prada. And then you realize it's so much more than that I want to do. And I was like, no, thanks. I'm out. Like, it's not for me.
Oh yeah, it's so true. And finding that out from people who are in the industry. I mean, you could do some sleuthing online.
Yeah.
But I think talking to people who are a few steps ahead of you is a really good way of doing this.
Absolutely. And with technology today, you know, like I said, there is the reality that some people might look at you as competition when you're going in. Well, with technology and social media, talk to someone in Boston. Talk to someone in Seattle or California. Yes, their cost of living might be different from you, but you're not really trying to look at the cost of living. It's understanding the best business practices in what they're doing in being a freelancer or solopreneur.
Right. And not just so that you straight up copy them, but so that you can know what the baseline is and put your own spin on it and innovate too, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll say this, one of the biggest reasons why I'm doing this work is because I wish somebody had done this for my generation. And the generation above me, most of them, you know, are in agency work, or they freelance with top agencies. Well, no one really shared a lot of information. So if you were to say, well, how much should I charge for a logo? It was like, you know, it was like, and it's like, so you didn't know what to charge, and then you're charging something just thinking, because you start thinking with other people's pockets, and that's a whole nother talk, instead of charging what your business and your value is. And you realize you're charging pennies compared to what the industry is charging, or even understanding the difference. Now, if McDonald's comes to me today and asks me for a logo, I mean, that's a completely different project, but they didn't share the business practices with us. So we're kind of just like trying to make it. And I think the upcoming generation, they're going through that too, of like my students, when they're asking me questions, they're like, we don't know. What is a logo? Is it $100? Is it $500? Is it $1,500? How much do I charge?
Yeah.
So trying to feed that information and share it.
Yeah. And some of it is about the quality. And, you know, there are people who want to pay $5 on Fiverr for a logo. And there are people who are suspicious of that because they wonder about the quality and they want something that's more customized and tailored. And so I think that idea of finding your value is really important.
It is huge. Yeah. It is huge. That's another thing as a business owner, and no one can really tell you that. Because someone can tell you you're great all day, but if you don't feel great, you'll still charge pennies. And there's people who don't do such great work and charge a lot of money. And I'm like, more power to you. I cannot be mad. I cannot be mad that you made that much money off of that design. Like, hey, like, you know your value and the value of what you're doing. And it's so funny you mentioned Fiverr, because I actually had someone suggest that to me years ago. I was like, Karie, you should get on this Fiverr. You should just, you know, pump out logos. And I was like, well, how much are there? They're like $5. And I said, what? And I said, you do realize that's not even a meal at Burger King, right? For me to use my creative genius and put together a logo and get paid $5, I can't even get the drink and fries. Maybe the fries, but I can't get the drink at a Burger King. I was like, no, thanks. Like, and that's when you learn your value of the business you're running. You start realizing it's quality over quantity. You know, I always say Nordstrom's, I say Neiman Marcus doesn't apologize for their prices.
No,
they don't at all. Trust me. And they don't take Visa, your debit card. I don't know if they do now, but I remember I went in there to get a lipstick. This was years ago. And I had a debit card. And the lady was just like, sorry, we don't take your debit card. And no, she didn't even say sorry. She was like, we don't take your debit card. And I was like, wait, what? And she's just looking at me and she didn't even blink. And I surely had to find an ATM to go and get cat. But I was like, that's their business. They don't apologize for it. They know the quality that they give. And that's it.
Yeah. And having that confidence is really important. Well, I think that's a good segue. I mean, I think we're starting to tiptoe into it, but what does it take to be successful at this freelancer, solopreneur, entrepreneurship world?
Yes. One is understanding that being a boss, being a business owner is a mindset. First and foremost, it's a mindset. And it's the mindset of believing that you can do it, seeing what you want to achieve, even though you don't understand the steps to get there, and having the confidence to go after it. It's kind of a crazy thing to start a business. If you really think about it. People who start businesses are nuts.
They really are.
No, seriously, you got.
I agree.
I'm like thinking of myself right now. Like when I was like, I'm gonna go do this. It's like you're gonna leave a job with a salary and benefits to go and do what exactly? And do the same thing that you're doing right now without the salary and the benefit. The set salary.
I made the same exact decision, and I've had the same, like, if I step back from it, same crazy feeling. And I've actually had people in my environment look at me like I have 3 heads and I'm crazy for doing it, but I knew it's what I had to do.
You knew it exactly. That's the thing. You only you know. Only you know, and it's a feeling in your gut. You're not being influenced by social media. You're not being influence that the only way to retire or get rich is to own a business, which is totally not true. There's a lot of people who own businesses and they are at retirement age and cannot retire because there's no 401ks, there's no savings left over. But number one, the thing is, you have to have that feeling in your gut, that fire in your belly to start this, because it is crazy. People will doubt you. People will look at you crazy, and you just have to know this is the thing for you to do. The second thing I would say is, and I'm still on that whole mindset thing because it's a way of being before you even get into the doing with being, owning a business, is understand your values. Really understand your core values. That has been like the key in every area of my life, from my business to other professional scenarios to even my personal life. So one of my core values is freedom. Hence why just being hired full-time by one company, just no matter how great they are, I can't survive long. It doesn't feel too free for me. Like, I have 3 jobs right now. I am a graphic designer, I'm a coach, and I'm an adjunct professor. And it works for me, even though some days I feel like I'm losing my mind when I teach, design, and coach in the same day. But I like the freedom of having that. So I understand why no matter what I do, I end up back in a fully freelance solopreneur role because it matches my core value. So understand your core values, because that will also seep into your business and how you set up your business as well. Then the other part of being successful is connections. I say this, networking is not an option. It is not an option. I am an introvert. I know I'm an introvert. Now, when I meet people, I know how to turn it on. I'm like, okay, getting ready to talk to Katie. We're about to do this thing. Okay. So I put on my bright lipstick and we're going to do it. But you have to know people. You have to build connections, because you are as rich as your connections, period. Some of my top opportunities have come through someone saying, hey, I heard about you through so-and-so. My graph, before people even saw a website, was like, oh, I heard you designed X for Y. I would like to meet with you and talk with you. There's a client that I did their packaging for, Chemet Biologics. They're out in Florida. I have never even met them. They just heard about me. This is states away from connections that I've made. They heard about me. So networking is not an option. Build relationships and understand how to network as well, right? So, and I know you have networking podcasts that help. So tune into that is helpful.
Yeah.
So networking, and I've talked about the money, and I cannot talk about that enough, because that is the area, especially if you are single, and there's no second income, and it's just you, and you're looking at your bank account, and let's be honest, it could be really low or really negative. It's hard to continue operating in business when your money isn't right.
Yeah.
And this is why I talk about it so much. So with that being said, a part of being successful is understanding when something's not working and you might have to pivot for a while. So you cannot be ashamed to go back and get a job, right? And still hustle with your business on the side. But I want to offer that freedom to someone. If someone hears this, it may be in the next 3 months, 3 years, whatever. Understand, never be ashamed if you have to go back into the workforce. You did not fail. It's just a pivot. So a huge part of being successful is realizing and being honest with your business and saying what's working and what's not working. And so you have to look at your business structure all the time. That's why you have admin days. A lot of people say, Monday's an admin day or Friday's an admin day. Fridays for me are admin days. I rarely take, client calls and all that kind of stuff, so I can look at my business and also mentally rest as well. And the other thing that I will say is making sure you have the relationships, but in those relationships, and it's not just about networking, it's having advocates for yourself. Make sure you're connecting with people who can recommend you to other people. Okay. So a lot of times people want to just have mentors, which is great, but do you have advocates? That means you're connecting with people who are in higher places than you in the industry. So that, they could be talking to someone who's like, hey, I need a freelancer for this job. Their business may not need it, but they have a friend who'll need it, and they can recommend you for that job or that business. That has come through in clutch moments so many times for me.
Yeah. And to add to that, it can sometimes be people who seem like they're competitors because
Yes.
maybe a client isn't a fit for them and they
Yes.
recommend to you, or maybe their book of clients is full.
Yes.
And they can't serve someone, so they can recommend to you. So it might sound counterintuitive, but making friends with people who are doing similar work actually can have a lot of benefits too.
Huge. But I just did that
Yeah.
last week, actually. A friend called me. We've known each other 10 years. They needed a logo done and they needed it fast. They're like, I'm in a clutch moment. I need to turn around. I said, you know what? I don't work that fast. I got so much on my plate right now with COVID-19, classes going online. And I said, but I can recommend you to someone. And they had a very nice budget. They had a nice budget for that logo. That money was going to come through. I called a friend of mine in New York. Actually, I was texting him. I was like, hey, do you have room on your plate? And connected them to, and both of them were like, thank you so much, because my friend, he got that money and you know what's happening in New York right now. And then my other friend was like, man, he is an amazing designer. He came through and it looks good. So building those relationships so you can have advocates and people who can recommend you to others.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot about relationship building.
All about it.
And that mindset piece is so important because you're going to have days that are, sunshine and rainbows, and you're going to have days where you're like, what have I done?
Absolutely. And sometimes the more what have I done is more than the sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
Like I said, I love being a business owner, but it is a crazy idea. Like whoever, the first person to put a bunch of ice cream on a truck and say, I'm going to drive around neighborhoods. What? Like, can you imagine his family, or her family? Like, what are you doing? Like ice cream on a truck and you're just going to drive around? And and I'm going to have a little bell that I'm going to ring as I'm going through the neighborhoods to let people know I'm coming down the street. That makes no sense in the world. But we all know the sound of when the ice cream man is coming down the street or ice cream woman is coming down the street. So it is a bit like, oh my gosh, what have I done? But it goes back to that mindset and believing in yourself. You are going to be your biggest cheerleader. So I encourage people, who are business owners, you have a coach, have a therapist, because you will need it. You will need it. You'll need spaces where you can discuss what you're doing without any judgment. And just think through your thoughts. And that to me is like the most precious tool that any person can have, not just a business owner. But if you're a business owner and you can talk to someone whose only goal is to see you win and think through your thoughts and talk through your business in a space that is non-judgmental, it's key. It is so key what can come out of that.
Yeah, because you can hear yourself versus all the other stuff people put in your head.
Absolutely. And all the other stuff that you're thinking that you need to do. But when you do the work, you don't really want to do that. Like, I don't want to be the influencer selling a bunch of makeup online, like on YouTube. Okay, then what do you want to do? And nothing wrong with the people who do that. I watch them all. Thank you for all the makeup tips, the YouTubers.
Yeah. But sometimes there's things that you think you should be doing. So I think that's a really good step, is like, what is a first step for someone who's like, I've heard it, I've heard the warnings, I know I need a good mindset and I've got to get my money in order. I'm in. What is the first step?
Okay. Since we're talking to college students, right? That is our main audience.
Yes.
My first recommendation of your first step is to get a job in your industry. Is that you do not take a first step as a business owner. You get a job and you learn on somebody else's dime. And I know we can start businesses in 24 hours. You can go to GoDaddy, get your domain name and your hosting, order those business cards on Vistaprint, and they're on their way. And in 5 days, you have a business. And that's awesome. But those key years, and I'm also saying that I'm not saying that you have to work somewhere for 5 or 10 years. I worked in the industry a total of 18 months before I started my own business. I did agency work and then I did in-house work, and I got my ropes around both sides of those. But the amount of stuff I learned, not just in my skill set, but around the business, was priceless. So when I worked at an agency, I saw how to present to clients. So my first job, we were a really small agency, and we were inside another agency because the two owners were friends. And we were inside another agency, and that big agency was interior designers. And you want to talk about a presentation of like the food, and everybody's dressed. And I mean, I was like, what is happening today? Like, I would walk by the office, and, we're graphic designers in jeans, and, we're really relaxed. But I mean, they learned how to present. So when it came for me presenting to a client, I remember that. So I'll have like a little parfait bar, a coffee ready, the juice, and just the presentation of when clients would walk in and see that and be like, oh, wow, this is nice. So, but I learned that by seeing it from somewhere else, and not just like having clients come in and be like, hey, what's going on? And of course it depends on the job size, right? If it's a really small job. But then when I went to work in-house, printing, because my background is a graphic designer, the whole printing process and developing relationships with paper reps and print reps. And I've made mistakes on printing on somebody else's dime. I've also made a mistake on printing where I told my students as a freelancer that could have cost me $1,500. That's a whole nother story. That was, and what saved me, it was an envelope. So this was a very custom job, and I created a custom pattern for this. She was a photographer, very high-end photographer, work all around the world, and she needed her brochure kit. And I created a custom wallpaper, like pattern to go inside of these envelopes. And it was 2 envelopes, and one of the envelopes printed without the pattern. Because I thought that the printer would get that if I send you one pattern, this one pattern goes for the 2 envelopes. Well, they were not happy. And they're like, they want the envelopes reprinted. Envelopes, that one part of the print job was $1,500, because the envelopes had a special die cut and everything, and a Pantone color and a special paper that was ordered in. Well, I was sweating, Katie. You want to talk about sweating? Like, I did not have $1,500 to reprint that. That was a lot. That's a lot of money now. That's a lot of money then. Well, what saved me is a client then called and said, the zip code is also wrong on the envelope. I was like, wait, what? Now, I know I'm not getting all this wrong. And I showed them the email that they sent me, and they had that zip code. Well, come to find out, the landlord put the wrong zip code on the contract. So the landlord had to pay for the reprinting of the envelopes. And he was not happy. He called me and he was like, what kind of envelopes cost $1,500? And I was like, well, they're on this special 80-pound text paper that comes from this pattern and stuff. So when I say that, because you don't understand, that's part of business. When you have to eat the cost of something. When you produce something and something messes up and you have to eat the cost. So my biggest advice for first step for college students, or even anybody who's switching careers and you want to start a business and career, go learn from someone, work in the industry, and not just learn the skill, but watch what's happening all around you of how they're running this business. What kind of clients are they going after? How are they getting the clients? Who is, especially my solopreneurs who are starting their own business, what are the key roles in that business that you need to think about having? Because yes, you might have to work all those roles, but you eventually, hopefully, will be able to contract people and then go on to, have full-time employees. But very first step is to gain some experience, lots of experience in that industry. And then from there, interview as many people as you can before you make that jump, just to understand what it takes to run a business in your industry, get some tips firsthand. And the second step is you'll have a 9 to 5 and then a 6 to 10, right? Like, work that business on the side first for as long as you can. Now people will say, this is for my dreamers out there. I know many people will say, you got to wait till you can fully replace your salary, right? And that is the most responsible thing to do. I will say that. Now, did your guest today, Karie, do that? No. I did not do that. Okay. I did not do that. The amount of people who are able to do that, they don't make the full 100% jump until they can completely replace their salary. Yeah. I will bet is very, very low, very low. And it is I will say this, it is a responsible thing to do, but you got to go with that feeling that you have inside. You're right. It's that passion that makes you jump. And I'm looking at you smile, Katie, because you know what it feels like. No one can give it to you. You know it, and trust that feeling and be prepared to hustle.
Yeah.
Be prepared.
And two, I think sometimes it's figuring out what is your minimal viable income. I think a lot of times we think we need to make more money than we really need to get by. And so maybe you take a half of your salary and maybe you don't eat out as much, or you cut back on the clothes you buy, or you have to really look at what matters to you. And are you waiting so that you can, eat out 4 times a week at really expensive restaurants? And is that a priority over doing what you want to do? I think you have to ask yourself some honest questions.
Absolutely. And that's part of that know your money exercise. When people, because what I have them do is write down every single dollar they spend.
Yeah.
And on their business and then on their personal life. So do you need Hulu and Netflix and cable all right now, plus your YouTube subscription, plus your Spotify? Do you really need all of that right now? And if you're not willing to give anything up, one, you have to ask yourself, then what is it going to take for me to build that business so I don't have to give anything up? And then two, do I really want a business? Because a huge part of having a business is risk. There is a financial risk. And that's why as entrepreneurs, if you look up the definition of entrepreneur, in the definition is the phrase financial risk, that you are willing to take a great financial risk. So if you want your comfortable life, maybe you can get angel investors, but then you have to be responsible for that money too. Because if I invested in your business and you're just trying to eat out 4 times a week, that's going to be a problem. But yes, you have to know that minimal viable income.
And a lot of times investors want you to prove that you can raise some of that money on your own from friends and family.
That is huge. That is huge right now. I guess it was 2 years ago now. I was downtown at our Capitol at one of the small, it was for female entrepreneurs, small business owners, event that they were having. And somebody was like, how do I raise the capital? Because I don't want to spend my money. And everybody in the panel, their eyes were lying. But you want to spend ours?
Yeah, not the thing to say.
That's not the thing to say. Yeah. It's you're going to have to spend some of your money. You're going to have to sacrifice some things. Now, when it comes to where you're sacrificing your entire livelihood, there might be a problem going on. But yeah, there's been times when friends are vacationing and I'm just like, I can't go just yet. Yeah, not right now. This is not the year. I'm building this year. I can't do it. But they can, because they get paid while they're on vacation, which I learned that the hard way as a freelancer. You don't get paid while you're on vacation, right? So yes, those are some of the steps that I would say are what you should do first.
Well, where can listeners connect with you if they have more questions, or are there any resources that we should direct people to learn more?
Absolutely. So I have my own podcast called the Creative DBA Podcast, and it's for creatives doing business as freelancers and solopreneurs, where we talk about everything dealing with mindset, money, and marketing. So you can check me out there, especially if you're a creative. And then on Instagram, I'm at Creative DBA. And then you can check me out at my website, kariewilliams.com. That is KARIE Williams with an S.com.
And we will link to all of those in our show notes, so you can check it out there too. Well, we
Mhm.
have covered so much ground. Is there anything we missed or any last wisdom you have before we sign off?
Absolutely. And that is, you can do this. You can do this. I know we talked about a lot of scary things today. And sometimes when I talk about this stuff, it's like, I hope I'm not crushing dreams. A part of being honest is giving you the not so good side. But to everybody listening right now, if you have that fire in your belly and you feel it in your gut, just know you can do this. It might be rough for a little bit, but you just keep working at it. Keep listening to resources that can help you. There's so many resources that are free today compared to when I first started a business. I mean, all this podcast, like this episode, what Katie's, teaching with collegehood, of like not just how to survive in the classroom, but outside of the classroom, of your next steps, but just really know that you can do this.
Yeah, you can do this. I think what we're trying to do is give you the tools that you need to really, truly do it. And I think part of that is understanding the reality of a situation so you can be intentional. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Karie, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Katie, thank you so much. Like I said, I was so excited. I love your energy. I love your podcast. It's been so helpful for me and my students in our classroom. So just thank you for everything that you're doing and all the energy that you're putting into Collegehood podcast.
Thanks so much.